Welcome to the Business Blast podcast. I'm your host, Tyler Wagner. This episode is brought to you by Authors Unite. Authors Unite provides you with all the resources you need to become a successful author. You can learn more about Authors Unite and join the free community at authorsunite.com. Now, let's jump into the episode.
I'm here.
All right, everyone. Welcome back to another episode of the Business Blast podcast. I'm your host, Tyler Wagner. And today I have Larry Mckenzie with us, better known as Coach Mckenzie. So welcome to the show, Larry.
Thank you, Tyler. Glad to be here.
Of course. Thanks for joining us. We'll dive right in. The first question I have for you is, what's the best story from your life that has an underlying valuable message?
You know what? So the best story that I can tell you is when I was about 14, 15 years old, me and my best friend were, kind of having some challenges. Probably, somebody probably would say regular teenage kids stuff. But long story short, we had a mentor, and he sat us down, my best friend at the time, Jimmy Gardner, and he said to both of us, he said, the decisions that you make right now at 14 years old will impact your life, some girl you don't know, your kids, and your grandkids. Now, obviously, at the time, I'm like thinking, that's a whole bunch of crap, right? This old dude telling me this stuff. And but long story short, I would go on and, pull myself together, play basketball, and, make a decision to leave Miami, go on to college and what have you. And my best friend at the time, Jimmy Gardner, well, he actually had a kid at 16, dropped out of school, had a few kids. And the first vacation that he ever had, my wife and I paid for it because I had met a girl, grew up in Miami, met a girl from D.C., had 2 kids, and now 4 grandkids. And so he actually predicted my future. And I went one way, Jimmy Gardner went another way, but it was true. The decision that I made at 14 years old impacted me, some girl that I didn't know, and it has impacted my kids and my grandkids.
Wow, that is a story, man. Thank you for sharing that. The next question I have for you is, what's the most valuable piece of information we should know that's within your expertise or industry?
Well, one of the things is I'd say for me is I'm a winner, and I'd like to win, and I've had a lot of success mentoring young men, particularly here in Minnesota. I became the first coach in the 100-year history of Minnesota State basketball to win 4 consecutive state titles. Last year, I became the first coach in Minnesota history basketball to take 2 schools to win multiple titles. So I think, I know what it's like to win, and I like to share that with people.
And what's your best piece of overall business advice, so not necessarily industry specific?
Well, you know what I'm saying? I think my overall business advice would be to lead by example. Don't ask people to do things that, so I'll put it this way, and I got a lot of quotes, but again, from one of my mentors, you can't teach what you don't know, and you can't lead where you won't go.
Yes. And if you could give your younger self one piece of advice, what would that be?
Stay focused.
And in your opinion, what's the key to happiness?
The key to happiness is understanding, learning to love yourself is the greatest love of all. And
what's the best book you've read, and what was the number one thing you learned from that?
The best book that I've read, and that's a tough one because I like to read, and I'll have to say I just most recently finished a book called Relentless, and that is about just staying focused and be willing to make sacrifices that are necessary to achieve your goal. Be responsible for you.
And what's your favorite quote and why?
My favorite quote is this, and as I said before, I'm a high school basketball coach, and my favorite quote right now, I have 2 of them. One is, being different is the difference. Being different is the difference. and the other is that one coach will impact more lives in 1 year than most people will in a lifetime.
I love that, man. Thank you so much for coming on. The last question I have for you before we let you go is, where's the best place for people to find you online?
You can find me at www.coachmckenzie, and Mckenzie is spelled Mckenzie, coachmckenzie.com. Again, that's www.coachmckenzie.com. But I'm also on Facebook as Larry Mckenzie. I'm on LinkedIn as Larry Mckenzie. I'm on Twitter as Coach Mckenzie.
Amazing, man. Thank you so much for coming on. We appreciate it.
Thank you for having me.
The podcast you just heard was recorded with Anchor. If you want to make your own, download the Android or iOS app completely free from anchor.fm/podcast. That's anchor.fm/podcast.